I guess we'll have to be climbing over these mics since we can't really go any further up. But let's start with Miss Kangarloo first. If you would like to go ahead and open up for us while I try to not hurt my back here.
I still have my cranberry in my mouth. Do you have yours? You don't have their cranberry. Wow. This is a question, actually, it's the everyday question. Do you see what is happening around you? Do you feel it? Do you connect with everything and everyone all around you? I think that's the message of Buddha. Today we are here to celebrate the birth, the enlightenment, and the death of Buddha. But if we go a little bit beyond that, I think today we are here to celebrate the awakening of the Buddha within each and one of us all in this room. The Buddha, I think, changed the whole face of spirituality, the whole meaning of it. Not looking for anything outside, but to go inside, inward, to find the Buddha within. We all have that little Buddha within us. And today is the day, I guess, I hope, that we all get in touch with that little Buddha within us. Even further. So I definitely don't like to speak. When I present, I want you to feel and experience, because I believe that you cannot become a spiritual person just by reading. You must experiment, you must experience, you must touch it, you can feel it. And then enlightenment is right there in front of you. You don't have to sit cross-legged under the trees to become enlightened. It can happen right here in this room, sitting on these chairs, having our cranberry, which is amazing, just to be in this moment, to reach inside and feel and recognize the Buddha within you. There are many creatures in this world, from a blade of grass to Buddha. We are all here for a reason. I always say, when you wake up in the morning, tell to yourself, I am not an accident. Existence needs me. This universe needs me. I am here for a reason, for a purpose. An ant, a little ant, walks around. Many of you, some of you, you have been in my classes and you have definitely seen my little dog. His name is Frosty. He is definitely an enlightened soul. He has been in yoga classes, meditation classes for 12 years. I am not kidding. He comes and sits in a class. And actually today my husband was asking me why we can't take Frosty with us. Yeah, why we can't take Frosty with us. I didn't even ask if I could bring Frosty with us. But you know, every one of us, all these souls around, are looking for enlightenment. And I believe in it. So to connect with everyone, I have a little prayer here that I want you please to close your eyes and just repeat after me. This is very, very short little prayer. Please open your heart fully to connect with the Buddha within. And repeat after me. I honor the sacred.
I honor the sacred.
I honor the earth,
I honor the earth.
our mother.
Our mother.
I honor the elders.
I honor the elders.
I honor my ancestors.
I honor my ancestors.
I honor all with whom
I honor all with whom
I share the earth.
I share the earth.
Four-legged,
Four-legged,
winged ones,
winged ones,
swimmers,
swimmers,
crawlers,
crawlers,
plants,
plants,
water,
water,
mountain,
mountains,
people.
people.
Om Shanti. Shanti, Shanti. Peace be with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kangarloo. And I think we will go ahead and move down the line. So everybody, please welcome the Reverend Danny Fisher.
Vesak is obviously one of our most important holidays in any Buddhist calendar. And one of the things I like to do each year when it rolls around is to sort of revisit tellings of the Buddha's life, whether it's the Bodhicharita by Ashvagosha or the Lalivastara or other sort of texts, and try to pay attention to things that I maybe didn't put as much emphasis on before. Notice aspects of the Buddha's life that perhaps stood out to me less the previous year or the previous years. This is especially an interesting practice in the last year. I read a really interesting book by Donald Lopez called The Scientific Buddha, where he talks about the way we tell the Buddha's story popularly in the West, and what aspects of the Buddha's story we tend to shave off or ignore when we tell it in our unique contexts and cultures. And in the last couple of years, I think I've started to notice more and more the way that we put a great deal of emphasis on particularly the contemplative life of the Buddha. And obviously this is a key principle, very important aspect of his life. But perhaps we give less emphasis to his moral life, to his life as an ethical leader, to his life as someone devoted to social peace and even a sense of justice, I think. In Buddhism we talk about the three trainings of samadhi, prajna, and shila. And often I think in the past when I've taught on shila, samadhi, and prajna, I've taught about them as being almost like a three-legged stool. That you have to give equal emphasis to each, or you're not going to sit on the stool very well. But in revisiting the texts, I'm actually starting to question that way in which I've taught this sort of Buddhist training. This is a passage that appears in both the Samyutta Nikaya and the Visuddhimagga, and elsewhere as well. So it's a phrase that I've noticed comes up frequently in the Pali Canon, almost exactly as I'm going to read it to you now. So it strikes me as an important, clearly something that the tradition gives a great deal of emphasis to in terms of how we should understand the path. When a wise one, well established in Shila, develops samadhi and prajna, then as a bhikshu or bhikshuni, ardent and sagacious, she or he succeeds in disentangling the tangle. So rather than suggesting necessarily three equal legs at the same time, it says first you need Shila. If you're not established in Shila, then you can't really go on to develop samadhi and prajna. So it seems to me, in encountering this, I've tried to pay much more attention to Buddha's teachings on ethics and morality, particularly around the precepts, but also in sort of a broader sense. When we tell the story of the Buddha's life, we often talk about him as, under the rose apple tree, under the Bodhi tree, sort of going from village to village teaching mindfulness. But one of the things we don't often talk about, particularly in the West, are aspects such as the Buddha adopting into his community a serial killer. Angulimala, who was a murderer and then went on murdering the Buddha. But then on encountering the Buddha, he was deeply affected in his heart, almost the same way the 5 ascetics were. And so the Buddha did something quite radical by adopting him into the community and basically saying that every sinner has a future. We also don't really talk about the Buddha wandering onto a battlefield to stop a war, which also seems to me really interesting and important. There was a great deal of, I'm on a Buddhist studies listserv, and there was a great deal of scuttlebutt after the PBS documentary about the Buddha, where the poet W.S. Merwin, talking about the Buddha, says he never stopped a war. And of course this, inflamed the Buddhist studies community, saying, well, yes, he did, if you read the text. We also don't talk about the Kuddadanta Sutta, where the Buddha in a previous life is a chaplain to a royal court. And the court, the king is very unhappy because of the kind of how unhappy people are, crime is going up, no one seems to be supportive or happy, and the Buddha in his previous life points out that there is not a great deal of income inequality, that people are not well supported, that basically there needs to be a kind of socioeconomic restructuring in the kingdom for things to be good and well and happy. And we don't talk about some of the really provocative things that he says in their context. In the Dhammapada, there are passages where the Buddha says things like, "He I call a Brahmin who, for example, practices sympathetic joy, love and kindness, compassion, and equanimity." That's a pretty radical thing to say in that context, where being a Brahmin was a birthright, not something that was earned. It would be a little bit like me going on the 700 Club with Pat Robertson and saying, "He I call born again who has sympathetic joy, love and kindness, compassion, and equanimity, not he who just says, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior." It would be very, very provocative at the time. So, on this Vesak, as the last few, I'm going to be thinking more and more about that, and also something my friend Bhikkhu Bodhi said to me recently when I interviewed him, and I'll just leave you with this, what he said. "I lived in Sri Lanka for about 23 years. There I observed that the Buddhist temple is the social and cultural hub of the community, and the resident monks are the ones who take the initiative in looking after the well-being of the people, regardless of religion and ethnicity. But as Buddhism is rooting itself in the US, I see a danger that it might become an elitist methodology for discovering inner peace, or for living happily in the here and now, at the cost of its capacity for transforming broader systemic causes of suffering. It seems to me that both the ultimate liberative goal of the Buddha's teaching and the active, compassionate application of the Dharma to the alleviation of socially caused suffering are at risk of being pushed to the sidelines in favor of a feel-good-about-yourself version of Buddhism, or a Buddhism that functions as a mere existential psychotherapy. This risk is especially serious as Buddhism becomes integrated into mainstream American culture." So when we say happy birthday to the Buddha this year, let's say happy birthday by trying to benefit one another.
Thank you so much, Danny. And then coming up next, I want everybody to take a very good look at Dr. Shakya's face. I want you to recognize this face, okay? Because the moment that the language of Sanskrit will come back just as popular as the English language, we need to all pay the utmost gratitude to this guy, the Dr. Shakya.
Talking about this Vesak day, I was born in Nepal, and Buddha was also born in Nepal, so I'm kind of countryman. Talking about, Buddha was born in Lumbini, most of you already know. So I will talk a little bit about Lumbini. So Lumbini was unknown, like 150 years ago. Nobody knows where that place is.
I'm sorry, is it possible if you talk close to the microphone, please?
That place, oh sir.
Thank you.
So the Lumbini is unknown for people. But people know that Buddha was born in Lumbini, but the place, the location, is unknown to people and 150 years ago. And in the 1896 CE, so it was discovered, and one of the British diplomat and the one Nepal government officer, they found that location. Before, the place Lumbini, where Buddha was born, it's kind of like covered with bushes, and there is a statue of the Mahamaya Devi, which is the mother of cycling Buddha. People worship. It's kind of they treat that statue as a Hindu god, and so they sacrifice animal in front of that statue. Nobody knew that that was Buddha's mother. And later, then after the discovery of Lumbini, then people start coming there and visiting there, and they start worshiping. And it's become a United Nations declared that place as a World Heritage 50 years ago. So that place become like a mecca for our Buddhists, especially for us. So if anybody has a chance to go to Lumbini, the Buddha said in the Mahaparinirvana Sutra that, so if you have a chance, you should visit the 4 main important Buddha's place. One is the birthplace, second one is the Bodhigaya, where he got enlightenment. Third one is Sarnath, which is also in India, where he gave a sermon, the first sermon to 5 disciples. And then the last one is where he got Parinirvana, enlightened, and passed away. It's in Kushinagar in India. So if you have anybody has a chance, then you must visit for this. And besides that, I would also like to discuss the main teaching of the Buddha. You don't need to go to too much philosophical teaching. You don't need to learn. The Buddha just simply said in the Dhammapada that if you can do, just not to harm others. So Dalai Lama also always say that if you are Buddhist, just do 2 things: not to harm others, or if you can do something, then benefit others. So if you just practice those 2 things, then you are Buddhist. You don't need to think too much about the philosophical, Madhyamika, Yogacara, lots of philosophical things. You don't need to go to that part. You just follow those 2 things. Keep in mind that don't harm others, do good things, cultivate good behaviors. So, and in Pali it says, Sakulasa Sampada, Akulasa Akaram Sakulasa Sampada, Etana Buddha Sasana. So this is the Buddha's main teaching. So just cultivate good, not to harm others. So I think I will complete this. Thank you.
Wow, this is already getting exciting, and we've only gone through a little more than half the panel. So, right next to me, right here, not only is he a very well cultivated Reverend, he is also a